Alright, if you're watching this recording, I'm actually doing a double recording now. So recording a lesson in Blackboard Connect, but also making a separate YouTube video of this tutorial on how to do a gridded self-portrait, and this is going to be the digital version. So my image is a vertical rectangle, thus my surface, my paper, or my digital file should also be a vertical rectangle. If you want to make this real easy, a square, so like the Instagram format, using a square image is going to be the fastest way to do this process. Now what I'm going to do, and I'm just eyeballing it here, is I'm going to start to draw my grid and make sure it's straight. Boop. And then I'm going to make this really easy on myself, and I'm just guessing it out here. If you do this in Photoshop or another program, they normally show you some nice clean grid lines, but I just have to kind of guess it out. I always start with drawing a giant plus sign on my paper, because really the simplest grid there is just a vertical and a horizontal line. Now if you want to be more precise with your image, you can also add a couple extra columns, like so. Now my grid isn't perfect. You can tell how the lines are slightly off here. That horizontal is not a perfect horizontal. I just want to make sure that whatever I have on the left also ends up on the right. Ooh, that one was not so nice. Not so nice at all. The benefit of doing this on the computer versus in real life is that all my mistakes here would have to be corrected with a pencil and an eraser, which would take time, which you can totally still do. But in this version, at least, all I have to do is move it or wiggle it, kind of. So I'm drawing out not a perfect grid, perfect enough. If you really want to get exact about this, when I teach this lesson in person, I always use a ruler with my students, and it comes down to like measurements for sure. Okay. So we're going to go with that. That's roughly about the right shape. And then, now I am doing this on Blackboard, which as we know is not the best drawing program. I'm actually going to use the highlighter tool. I like to use the highlighter tool here a lot because it's a little bit more forgiving. And I'm going to do a rough sketch of my face. And this is what we like about the grid in art, is that it gives us landmarks to go by. Now the grid can be temporary or it can be permanent. So you can choose to use this grid like tiles and fill in shapes and stuff in the background afterwards. Or you can delete this grid later on. But if I'm doing this in a two-dimensional version, this section would all be done in pencil so that I could erase it later on. Because the grid is really just a drawing tool. So I like to start kind of towards the center, and I'm just using landmarks here. So I'm following the lines around my face. I'm trying to go fairly quickly for this example. And I'm going to try and drop my hairline down here. And the grid helps, as I said, it gives me landmarks to follow. And then my neckline kind of drops down to this part of the box. What we like about grids is that essentially it turns us into robots. You don't have to think too much as you're drawing it out. You're just kind of going with the lines as you see them. If you watched any of the intro videos that I do, I recorded this week's, or the one that you saw this Monday at this Panera location. It's because it's nice to take advantage and get outside some. So I'm just going along with it. And as I'm working on this, I'm seeing things like, oh, my hair is super bumpy on this side. Yeah, I get it. I like to try and get out every once in a while. You know, just remind myself that the perks of working online is that you can do that. You can travel and you can get out. You don't have to be shut inside all day if you don't want to be. Now, as you might guess, I am a much better artist on paper, so this is always a good challenge for me to try. So this is where it gets detailed. Thank you. It's blackboard good, right? So this is the part where it starts to get kind of funky, and then you might actually have to go in and really delete and mess around with some things. But now you're going to start sketching out the details of your face, which that's where you really want to start using the grid, and even making more lines can help. So as I can see here, most of my face is actually fitting in this box over here. Isn't that kind of interesting? Like the majority of the details of my face are fitting in here. So maybe I'll do some big parts first. I'll do like the sunglasses since they take so much space and they're a pretty good landmark. Kind of goes down, and then I see how the sunglass comes out to the top of the box here and arcs its way down. Whoop. And they're almost going to become goggles. Crap. I gotta delete that one. Blackboard. Okay. The details are by far the hardest part of this project. And I'm just trying to draw one box at a time. See how it lines up. Nope. This is my sketch, so I can erase some things later on. Does Blackboard have an eraser? I don't think it does it? I've never tried that function if it does. Not the best. Not the best. I'm sure if you are already comfortable doing digital stuff, yours is going to be so much better than this one. And then I'm curving down right here with my nose. And the trick here is I'm trying to only draw what I see. I don't see a harsh line with my nose other than with a change in lighting, but I'm going to capture that with color anyway. I see a little line forming right here off the nose, this big bulky highlighter, and then lips coming down here like so. And they're kind of like a puddle. And that's my step one. Now from here, after I've sketched everything out, I can actually choose to delete my grid. That's what the grid was, just a drawing tool to help me line things up. If you were doing this on paper, you would be erasing your grid at this point. At this point, you can use whatever material you figured out last week with skin tone to start to create those highlights and those shadows. And I can even go on top of here and just delete these. Now, Bobby, your skin tone chart is actually pretty close to my skin tone, so I'm going to use yours as a reference. And all I'm doing now is I'm going to start with some highlights here. So my highlights are kind of in this pink yellow section like so. It's going to be a little bit messy at first. So this isn't pure highlight. The pure highlight's I think going to be a little bit more yellow as it casts in from the window. Not too pretty yet. That's okay. It's okay. This is a point in which when I taught in brick and mortar, kids would always be like super frustrated because everything just looks like a mess. But it gets better. It gets better. Now, you can always build up with tones. So I can always get darker. I'm going to do an actual yellowish tone for my highlight. Coffee with your creamer. I like that. So you'll notice that your skin, of course, continues down into your neck. It's always a funny thing to say that. I find that a lot of my students who watch makeup tutorials, guys included, makeup tutorials are calming, often tend to have a real comfortable time when it comes to working with skin tones and painting in particular. So as I said, I'm going to do a highlight color in here. Definitely never leave the paper white. That's a big taboo when it comes to portrait art. Never leave your paper white. So even if your skin is like super contrasty and you have bright highlight, at least do like a subtle yellow on top of there. Right now this person's looking kind of sunburned. That's okay. It started out being blackboard good and now it's regressed down to not so good. But I'm just going to keep adding my shadows and making it a little bit darker. Yeah, I get you. For sure. So I noticed that my colors are starting to get a little bit more intense towards the edge here. And they're actually, if you can see, also getting a little bit cool at the top. So I'll probably be adding a little bit of purple in there. I'm going to carefully go around the nose. You see, this is a good time to but I'm starting to pull out those details that we had lost. And then it's going to be, I'm going to have to make my, oh, I did realize I have only been working in the same size of tool this whole time. So I can make it darker. And then down into here. I'll go back with that highlight tool in a bit to complete that tone. And then now I'm going to add a little bit darker color here. Maybe moving more into the purples. That color might work. And then it's a little bit too bright. It's kind of making the image exciting. Gonna do a little bit of purple here. A little bit of shadow over here. And notice that the shadows are just getting kind of smaller and smaller, darker and darker. Yeah, the shadows are the tricky part, really. Highlights are pretty straightforward. And I'm just going to try and neutralize that purple a little bit. Maybe bring in some dark warm orange yellow. Maybe that one will do, we'll see. Yeah, look at that. That's actually a yellow that I'm putting on top of the purple. So you can always bring in the opposite color to neutralize it. Like so. Miss Murphy is looking a little bit sunburnt in this image. That's okay. She has sunglasses on. It all makes sense. See. So now I can do the other details with some more reckless abandon. For the most part, people don't care too much about hair as long as you're mixing some tones here. And definitely never feel like you have to draw every single piece of hair. Hair, when it's illustrated correctly or animated correctly, kind of moves like water, which is always surprising to a lot of people. So think about it more as drawing a wave. You're not going to draw every little drop of water in there. You're going to build up slowly. Yeah, right? If your favorite animations that involve a character with maybe moving hair, look at it closely and see that it kind of moves as a unit. even in movies like Brave with Merida and how well they animated her curls,